Architecture has always been more than the creation of shelter. It is a cultural expression, a reflection of society's values, and a tool for shaping human life. Le Corbusier was one of the most revolutionary minds of the early 20th century for his ability to provoke thought, ignite debate still being had to this day, and reshape the built environment. Charles-Édouard Généré was born in 1887 in Le Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland. He would later adopt the famous name Le Corbusier as a pseudonym from his Belgian ancestors. Le Corbusier was an architectural designer, painter, urban planner and writer before his death in 1965. Like his contemporaries Frank Lloyd Wright and Mies van der Rohe, he didn't have any sort of formal architectural training. Instead, he taught himself by reading about architecture and philosophy and created a vision for a world built on order, efficiency and modernity. During a period of immense social, technological, and cultural transformations. The early 20th century was marked by rapid industrialization, mass migration into cities, and the devastating impact of two world wars. Traditional architectural styles struggled to respond to these new conditions. Le Corbusier seized this moment to advocate for change. He was always fascinated by airplanes, automobiles, and ocean liners and believed that this age of machinery represented efficiency, speed, and progress. He argued that architecture should learn from these machines and was influenced to create efficient architecture. There was also his list of inspirational architects that played a pivotal role in his design thinking, some of which he worked closely with, such as Auguste Perret and Peter Baron, who were considered pioneers of the architectural use of reinforced concrete and changed Corbusier's belief in modern materials and functional design. Joseph Hoffmann was another whose designs showed geometric clarity and emphasis on functional design that aligned with Corbusier's purist ideals, and Tony Garnier, who imagined cities with zones for work, living, and leisure that resonates with his Le Corbusier's radiant city concept, which we will also present to you later. 5 Points of a New Architecture, released in 1926 by Le Corbusier. Revolutionizing architectural design and establishing a modern philosophy. These new concepts caused reactions to emerging industrialization and the newfound structural possibilities of reinforced concrete, dismissing the heaviness and adornment of earlier staples in favor of practicality, transparency and openness. The first principle pilatus elevates the building structures with slender columns that lift the building form away from ground level and allows the walls to not have to act structurally. Not only did this innovation offer better human needs, but this also split from architecture's historical ties to the ground, embodying a fresh, lighter aesthetic. The second principle, an open plan, made possible by non-load-bearing build-ups, allowed for flexible interior spaces and illustrated modernism's departure from traditional constraints. Previously, walls supported structural loads, restricting flexibility and imposing compact, fixed arrangements. Using reinforced concrete and slim columns, the weight was transferred to the frame, allowing walls to be relocated or taken down. The third principle, a free facade, considering that walls no longer carried structural function, Le Corbusier could focus on the design, proportion and openness without constraint. This aligned with modernism's valuing of logical, expressive forms. Artistic representations were now allowed to be explored without the worry of causing structural integrities. The fourth principle, the strip window, or ribbon window, is seen as one of the most iconic elements of modernism. Extending horizontally across the facade, it allowed panoramic views, filling the room with its natural light, enhancing the idea of transparency and the connection between indoor and outdoor spaces. The final principle, roof gardens, transformed the top of the building into a functional area, integrating nature into modern living while also offsetting the loss of ground space, in a bid to support urban sustainability. Le Corbusier's 5 principles represented a turn in architectural modern ideals: efficiency, lightness, openness, and the conversation between human needs and technological capabilities. The application of these principles in structures like Villa Savoye defended the modernist perspective, impacting future generations of architects. Le Corbusier's Modular, 1940s, was a system of proportions that connected architecture to the human form. Centered around a 6-foot individual with an extended arm, it integrated anthropometric data, the golden ratio, and the Fibonacci sequence to create red and blue measurement series. These measurements were used to shape the design of ceilings, staircases, furniture, and facades, achieving a balance between functionality and visual appeal. In contrast to earlier proportional systems, the Modular was well suited to the machine age, providing a universal standard that could be adapted for prefabrication and contemporary building methods. It created a link between mathematics and human experience, ensuring designs were not only logical but also centered around human needs. Building on his 5 points of architecture, 1926, this system influenced the creation of modular grids, facades, eye-level ribbon windows, and roof gardens aimed at enhancing comfort. Le Corbusier's Domino frame, 1914-15, served as a prototype structural system consisting of reinforced concrete slabs supported by slender columns and a staircase, with no walls that bore the load. This design enabled an open, flexible layout that could be easily modified for various functions. It was groundbreaking because it marked a departure from conventional masonry construction, where walls supported the weight, thereby restricting spatial possibilities. It established the groundwork for Le Corbusier's 5 points of architecture: pilotis, free plan, free facade, ribbon windows, and roof garden. The Domino idea also shaped modern mass housing, prefabrication, and urban design, making it a fundamental element of 20th century architectural theory and practice. Le Corbusier sought to address issues caused by rapid industrialization, the Great Depression, and the migration of people to cities without infrastructure to hold them. This created overcrowding and inadequate sanitation. Le Corbusier's urban planning ideas tried to solve this through the incorporation of light, air, greenery, and efficiency, yet encountered criticism over time for how the spaces alienated people. The realization of his ideas on urban planning was seen in his proposal for Paris. Le Corbusier's focus was more on towers and vehicles rather than its inhabitants. This had a profound impact on urban planning after the war and subsequently contributed to a shift away from rigid modernist principles. A house is a machine for living in. With this statement, Le Corbusier challenged the architectural world to rethink what architecture could be. This idea was at the heart of Le Corbusier's architectural philosophy, believing that architecture should serve the people. Designing for people, their needs and environments. He considered a building as not only a functional shelter but as an instrument for improving social life, health, and efficiency. The idea that a house is a machine for living reflects his ordered and clear architectural thinking, which was inspired by his interest in engineering and machines and his sometimes radical need for progression. This clear thinking is highlighted in the creation of his 5 principles of architecture: Domino building, modular concept, and the adoption of efficient mass production. This ordered and machine-like design approach eventually saw him often disagree with other notable modernist architects such as Adolf Loos, arguing that modern culture is best described by the work of those anonymous people, notably engineers, who do not try to invent a new aesthetic. Coming back to the idea that the form or aesthetic of a building should be related to the function of said building. Le Corbusier was a core leader of the modern movement and had multiple inputs into what we now regard as the modern movement. Through the publications of his design theories, he brought into light his ideas on modern architecture and the direction he saw architecture should go in the future. These books, spread out over the globe and towards a new architecture, is referred to as the go-to book on modern architecture. His role in the founding of the International Congress of Modern Architecture continued to spread his ideas on what architecture should be in the debates that CIAM had on the future of housing, cities, and society. Le Corbusier's subsequent Athens Charter, La Charte d'Athènes, are widely regarded as a defining period in modernist urban planning, a moment when architects came to an agreement on what the future of our cities should look like, the legacy of which we still see in urban planning today. Unité de Habitation, constructed between 1946 to 1952, located in Marseille, France, was built in response to the increased need for mass housing after World War II. With thousands without homes and Europe scarred from the war, Le Corbusier was commissioned to design a prototype for mass housing which could be replicated around Europe and would later become one of his most successful and iconic housing projects. Unité de Habitation houses 337 apartment units across 17 stories. There are 23 different unit layouts that can accommodate different sized families and needs, with furnishing options picked by Le Corbusier. This is one of 5 different Unité de Habitation projects in Europe, but this case study will only focus on Unité de Habitation Marseille, which is the first to be completed, and is considered to be the most complete realization of the concept. The Unité de Habitation buildings and the raw use of concrete would become the signature style of brutalism. The project was inspired by multiple buildings at the time, such as Dom Communii Narkofen, built 1928-29 by Moise Ginsberg and Ignace Molinas in Moscow, with its split-level apartments and interior street. Ludwig Hilbersheimer in his 1924 concept of a vertical city, which clearly shows the division of served and service space of car below and raised pedestrian streets above with apartments above that. The Bergpolderflat in Rotterdam by W. de Tegen, Brinkman and van der Vlucht, the first gallery flat in the Netherlands. The building site is located relatively close to the city center in a built-up area. It is situated next to the main road of Boulevard Michelet, but the building is set back from the street. and oriented long ways towards north on the site to make the most of the east to west views and to give prospect onto the park below. This orientation also blocks the cold winds that come from the north, with the north face of the building blank. The location on the site had the initial intent to allow for other Unité habitations to be constructed in conjunction with the constructed one. Instead, over time the building has become surrounded by similar typologies, so what was once a radical building that stood out now blends into the urban fabric of Marseille. The overall design concept stems from Le Corbusier's urban planning concepts as visualized in the Radiant City, but compacted and made vertical, creating a vertical garden city. Le Corbusier was inspired by cruise ships which he often traveled on that shared this same vertical city typology, in which all the needs for the residents or passengers is contained within the ship. The building's material is made up of concrete and glass. This raw use of concrete would later become the signature of brutalism, but was at the time a design choice based on the lack of steel after the completion of the war. The concrete was poured into a wooden framework that was organized to leave the wood plank grain and pattern into the building. In contrast to the concrete, the facade is a multitude of colors that are also reflected in the interior painting of the units and small details across the building. At 165 meters long, 24 meters wide and 56 meters high, the building appears to float above the ground. With a rectangular and bulky main body housing the interlocking apartments, circulation and a garden roof terrace with sculptural ventilation towers which are reminiscent of an ocean liner's smokestack. When looking at a section of the building and a section of an ocean liner, the link between the two is noticeable and is a direct nod to Le Corbusier's ideas around machine living. Having compared his buildings to ships in his manifesto, towards a new architecture where ocean liners are a contained city. When Le Corbusier was initially approached to construct the Unité habitation projects, he agreed as long as he could build outside of the regulations set at the time. This was so he could explore some of his design theories that had not yet been fully realized. The 5 principles of architecture, a signature of Le Corbusier's designs, are evident in the design of the Unité habitation. Number 1. Pilatus, the pilatus which tapered down from the floating body towards the ground, freeing up the ground floor for public use and recreational activities. Number 2. Open plan. An open plan is seen in the integration of an advanced version of the modular domino structure which enables the building structure to act like a bottle rack, with the apartment units essentially able to slide into the building's frame. Number 3. A free facade is evident through the articulation of the facade within the units, as the walls are not structural but also the 7th and 8th floor, which differs from the rest of the facade as it houses the social facilities. Number 4. Trip windows. Ribbon windows are used as part of the facade and are referred to as ship-like when looking at the form or machine-orientated design approach of Le Corbusier. Number 5. A roof garden is also used on the terrace along with all the other public, social facilities incorporated into the design. The structure was designed in accordance to the modular man dimensions that Le Corbusier constructed, with the interlocking unit's height being the man with hand above head or 2.3 meters. This concept is reflected throughout the design, with the modular man appearing cast into the concrete throughout. The consistent modular dimensioning was assisted by the modular bottle rack building type, which is an advanced version of the domino frame structure Le Corbusier introduced years before as a possible solution for mass housing production. The circulation of the building is one of the most interesting social features of the design, with central corridors every 3 floors that serve as main internal roads. This provides opportunity for efficient circulation and doesn't waste space that could otherwise serve as room for apartments. With an elevator as the main vertical circulation and emergency fire escapes. Utilizing the split interlocking unit type, the apartments have an upper and lower level with a staircase to the edge of the unit. The movement within this differs between the different unit types, but overall is very linear through the bedroom areas and open in the living. The drawback to this unit type is that the split level divides the living spaces in the lower unit and has the master bedroom and living room in the same space. Some residents tried to fix this by removing the double height void, but this ruined the air circulation created by the split unit typology. The internal corridors with units either side have little to no access to natural light except at the vertical circulation points, creating a very dark and uninviting space where social connection is the core idea. The importance of this building in the portfolio of Le Corbusier's work is how it differs from his residential works as well as his other multi-res works, and the innovation and impact it has had on future buildings. Most of Le Corbusier's other works have aspects of purism painting and plan, which is something he explores in various ways across his work. But Unité habitation uses the domino frame type as the foundation for the structure, creating a very grid-orientated, organized and rectilinear plan. It is also the first time Corbusier was able to realize his modular idea in practice. This project showcases Le Corbusier's ideas on the meaning of architecture, clearly expressing his 5 points of architecture. It is designed around modular housing and dimensioned according to the modular theory. The design is focused around the people and their needs, providing housing that was innovative and created a social fabric usually seen in neighborhoods but in a vertical apartment fashion. Following in the success of the Unité habitation projects and Le Corbusier's influence on modern architecture, and creation of the Athens Charter, multiple other mass housing developments were created inspired by Unité habitation, such as Hume Estate, Manchester, which was redeveloped into a mass concrete housing estate in 1972 after the previous estate's large jump in population becoming slum-like. It was a major success at completion but over time became a center for crime, after a disconnect to all the social features around it. Another example was the Preux de Gaulle, St. Louis in the US, completed in 1954. At the time of completion the project was immediately a failure. It didn't integrate green spaces like intended and the residents were people with nowhere else to go. With a vacancy rate up to 60% by 1970 and maintenance supported from rent, the estate fell into disarray and became a center for crime and was destroyed in 1972. Le Corbusier's vision reshaped modern architecture, replacing tradition with innovation. His legacy endures in cities worldwide, challenging us to balance functionality, beauty, and humanity in design.